Awesome, thanks everyone. I'm happy to be here. Can you hear me okay in the back? Great, so give me a hand wave if at some point you can't hear me or understand me. So like Tim said, I'm Anna Heck. I just switched in January from the University of Minnesota B-Lab to Michigan State. I got my start in beekeeping in Nicaragua. After college, I wanted to live in a Spanish-speaking country for a couple of years. I had studied abroad and was looking for a longer experience. So I worked in Nicaragua with a local nonprofit organization in the capital, and I worked with an organization that did rural development. And I had this opportunity to work with beekeepers, and I just all of you kind of know what it feels like to fall in love with beekeepers. So this is where I first got started. We were working with Africanized bees. Most of the time my job was just to be the smoker, because having someone smoke the bees is kind of like a full-time beekeeping job in there sometimes, because those bees are Africanized and more defensive. And then I also worked with a cooperative of beekeepers, mostly women, who were using beekeeping as a way to supplement their household income. A couple of pictures of beekeeping in Nicaragua. So this is us. We had pulled some honey. Those are all bees full of honey. What's not pictured is that we were all kind of like standing on the back bunker and getting a ride too. Don't tell my mom. So I moved back home to Minnesota after living in Nicaragua for a couple of years, and I tried to get involved with the University of Minnesota. I took their class about beekeeping in northern climates and realized beekeeping in the northern climate was way different than what I had learned. I asked the bee lab if I could volunteer with them. They said no, they don't take volunteers. But then a couple of months later, they said, hey, we're hiring part-time for someone. And that worked out perfectly for me because I was starting a graduate program in public policy. So I was able to work with the University of Minnesota and learn beekeeping in Minnesota while being in school. So when I started, we were at our old honey house. It was basically, here's like kind of the demolition pictures of it, but it's basically just a big garage. It was condemned by the university for extracting honey, so our honey house we weren't allowed to use for extracting honey because the standards were not up to code. But then luckily we got this beautiful new bee lab at the university. So I got to kind of see both sides of the bee lab in Minnesota. I work with the Bee Squad, which is the extension and outreach arm of the University of Minnesota Bee Lab. So Marla Spivak, who's a top honeybee researcher, started the Bee Squad because she knew that there was a lot of interest from the public and from multiple beekeepers, and she wanted to provide more outreach and extension with them. One of our programs was a program where customers hired us to manage colonies on their property. So that's like an awesome gig, right? Like you don't have to invest in all these bees and hives, right? Someone else buys the bees and the hives, and then they pay you to go take care of the bees. So we have bees in about 100 locations. About a third were companies, and then 2/3 were families. So a lot of my job was just going from place to place and taking care of colonies. And that was really cool because for the whole like metro area, we could really get a sense of trends in the area, and then we talk with the beekeeper and say, oh, you're in the city? Yeah, we noticed that this year the honey nectar flow was a little early there. And it gave us a huge big picture of bees in the Twin Cities area. And then our other programs were a lot of working with the groups in the public. So we had a pollinator ambassador program where we would work with high school students and train them to do pollinator outreach. We have a program where we work with veterans and teach sun-hungry beekeeping or provide in-kind experiences. And then we have some habitat kind of projects too. I can do a whole talk on Minnesota, but I'm not Michigan now. So the group taught beekeeping, a lot of urban beekeeping. I'm going to brag a little bit because this is really cool. Who here knows that the rusty patch bumblebee is extinct? You're excited, I'm endangered. I'm an endangered species. So last summer it was my goal to find a rusty patch bumblebee. We have been checking this site. We've been doing bumblebee surveys for 4 years. What we do is we go around with these little Tupperware containers. We get the bumblebees right off the flowers, put them on ice, bring it to an expert who's able to identify the bumblebee as species. And then once the bee warms up, it's able to fly away. We'll dot it with the dot of paint before it flies away so we don't keep catching the same exact bee, right? So anyway, we got a rusty patch bumblebee, and this was a place we had installed a lot not what the graphic designer would have done with the slide. But basically, you can see that the varroa mite is driving the bee crisis. Alright, so a lot of times in entomology, so study of insects, when we talk about pest management, we take an integrated pest management approach. And what integrated pest management tries to do is say, okay, we know we have to intervene and control pests, but we want to also at the same time limit the number of pesticides that we're using. We don't want to use pesticides or chemicals unnecessarily, right? We only want to use them if they're necessary, so we want to be really strategic about when we're intervening instead of just kind of a blanket approach of chemicals. And this strategy is used a lot in crop production. A lot of university extension programs have integrated management programs so that when they're working with growers, they're able to say, okay, if you have a pest, let's talk about what your level of damage is. Like a little bit of damage is okay. We know this is economic, so we can't allow for too much damage. So really being strategic about when we intervene. So it's based on prevention, monitor, and control. And we want to minimize chemical exposure not only for the crop, but also for humans and safety. So an integrated management pesticide program will come up with a monitoring program so that you're looking for levels of pests and then also establish guidelines for making an intervention. So the questions that we'll ask when we come up with our integrated pest management for varroa are, what should we know about varroa? Where do we see varroa? When do we see varroa? When should control begin? And what management options can we consider? So we're going to start off with the first question about just general information about varroa. Here's the varroa mite. You can see it on the abdomen of the bee here. And remember, it's really big in comparison to the size of the bee, right? So people say it would be like having a frisbee or a dinner plate on you. Most of our honeybees are not able to get that varroa mite off of themselves. There are some bees, we'll talk about them a little bit later, that are better at getting the mites off themselves, but for the most part, that varroa mite is there on their abdomen and sometimes their thorax, and it's really hard for the bees to get off themselves. So the mites are able to detect larvae that are about to be capped, and so when they, so they'll be looking for, they are able to sense that the larvae, that stage of the bee, so they'll jump into the cell right before it's capped, and then the female will lay some eggs. This photo here has some of the younger varroa. They're really hard to see, but there's a male and then several female, and then those adults, so those new females will, and the older female too, will emerge on the bee. So here the photo is a little bit bigger. So we have the female, a male, and then some more female dies. So varroa or haploid diploid, anyone know that word? It's the same, like honeybees are too. It means that the females have two sets of genes and the males don't. But the female will lay, the female lays the male and then some females. Those offspring mate with each other. So it's all inbreeding, and then unless there's two mites in a cell, and then the newly mated mites emerge on the honeybee. So varroa is a big issue. It's not native to our honeybees. It's native to the Asiatic honeybees. And then in 1960, there was a colony of our European honeybees, Apis mellifera, that were brought to China within close contact of the Asiatic honeybee, Apis cerani. And then that's when the varroa transferred to Apis mellifera. We didn't have varroa in the United States until 1987, when varroa was found in Wisconsin and Florida. So if you talk to beekeepers who have been doing beekeeping for a while, they'll remember what it was like to keep bees before varroa. And it sounds really magical and awesome. I really wish we, it's been a huge change in how we manage our bees. Before, it was a lot more hands-off, and now beekeepers are constantly just trying to keep their varroa level under control. So at the time it was introduced, there was only one approved treatment for varroa, which was validate. And so in the beginning it wasn't that bad from what I hear here. There were some varroa was introduced, sometimes the varroa is introduced, it doesn't kill bees right away. The big problem with varroa is that it's spreading viruses worker bees. They prefer older nurse bees, and those older nurse bees, remember, are in the hive, they're feeding the larvae, and so if you think about it, this gives the mites a really good opportunity to be very close to those larval cells right before those larval cells are hatched, right? Because they're on those adult bees and then that are feeding the larvae. And they're obligate parasites, so that just means that varroa can't live outside of the hive. They totally depend on honeybee colonies for their survival. Maybe a little bit, sometimes in labs they're able to get them to live a little bit, but for the most part, they can't live out in the wild. So varroa by itself is bad, right? They affect the immune systems of bees, they reduce lifespan, and they can lead to colony kind of death and collapse. But what really is hard are the viruses that they're spreading. We talk about varroa a lot as like a dirty needle, right? They're in the colony, they're spreading viruses between the bees in that colony, and then these mites are also spreading viruses between different colonies and different yards. So the viruses can also affect the immune systems of the bees, and they make the bees more susceptible to other issues. So more, if your bees are faced with pesticides, or if there's not awesome forage, or there's different other issues, those viruses make the bees more susceptible. And they also can lead to colony collapse at any time of the year. We see most of our colony losses that are varroa and virus related in the fall or winter, but they can happen at other points of the year as well. So the way that you manage your colonies can affect your entire beekeeping area. And so honeybees that are collapsing from like a mite infestation can be a source of mites transferring to healthy colonies. There's a paper that talks a lot about the autumn invasion of varroa, so looking at autumn and how mite levels can spike because mites are moving from one colony to another. There's another paper that looked at population models of varroa mites and showed that, okay, just from this reproduction of mites, we can't explain how the numbers got so high. So that means that mites are coming in from other colonies. And they also were able to look at bees leaving and bees returning, and the bees leaving into this healthy colony had fewer mites than the bees that were returning. So you can see that bees were coming in with mites. So for a while I was a little bit confused because I thought, okay, well we know mites prefer the younger nurse bees, so then how are these mites spreading from colony to colony, right? And one thing that happens is that at low infection levels of varroa mites, the varroa prefer those younger nurse bees. And they are using the chemical profile of the younger nurse bees to identify them and prefer them. But when varroa levels really increase, then the chemical profiles of the nurse bees and the older bees overlap. So then at that point, the varroa don't have a preference. So they'll be on the younger nurse bees and on the older bees. And those older bees are the foragers, and they're the ones going out and collecting honey. And so this horizontal transmission is what we call it, when mites go from one colony to another. And this can happen in a few different ways. So there are data that show that if you have a sick yard with a lot of varroa mites, or a sick colony with a lot of varroa, those bees will go to other colonies. So they have the varroa on them, and they'll disperse. Another thing is that if your colony is really sick, so say you have a really healthy colony, right? And you have done an awesome job keeping your varroa mite levels low. In the fall, your bees might be robbing other colonies, and the colonies that they're going to be successful robbing are those colonies that are sick with mites and not able to cut their honey very well. So even if you have really clean bees, the bees might be entering kind of mite bomb, or what we call it, super infested colonies and coming back with mites. Okay, I'm just like calming everyone out, right? Sorry. Like a more fun topic next year. So where do we see varroa? So pretty much everywhere. Like it's not, we have varroa in every colony now. It's not like people think, sometimes like, my colony doesn't have varroa. And it's like, that's, maybe you're the only person in these states that doesn't have varroa, but that's hard. So Dan Wines talked a little bit about the Bee-Informed Partnership data. You can go on bee-informed.org and look at the different data and learn from it. But what we see is that factor beekeepers with a lot more colonies that are because I'm a backyard beekeeper that I'm going to somehow save my bees, but our backyard beekeepers are really susceptible to losing their colonies. All right, so you can see varroa, if your eyesight's pretty good, you can see the varroa mites because they are pretty big, but you only see varroa normally when mites are very high. And again, so colonies that have mites will often be like your favorite colonies. Sometimes they're colonies that make a lot of honey, they build up really big, strong, healthy colonies are the ones that are really susceptible to death because there's so much brood in that colony that there's so much opportunity for mice to reproduce. And it's really common for us to hear about colonies that are, like awesome, healthy, strong, honey-producing colonies in the summer that die in the fall from mites. Can you see the mite? So it's kind of cheating because we made the photo small, so it's harder to see. But there is a mite here. It's actually on a bee that has deformed wings. So it's different. Even though you can see mites with the naked eye, it's difficult to see them. Oftentimes they're in between the abdomen segments and on the underside of the bee. And so a lot of times we'll talk to people and they'll be like, oh, I don't have varroa because I didn't see any. And normally you're only going to start seeing varroa if those mite levels are really high. For people that see a lot of colonies, if you start seeing mites on bees, that's kind of like a little bit of a panic, like I need to do a mite test now because if I'm seeing mites, that means the mite levels are already much higher than where I want them to be. So the varroa reproduce in worker brood or drone brood. They do prefer to reproduce in the drone brood. They prefer that about 8 to 10 times more. And if you think about drone brood, drones take longer to develop, so it also provides more time for the varroa mites to lay eggs and more adults can emerge out of the drone brood than out of the worker brood. But also we think about this as an opportunity for control. Like, okay, we know that the mites prefer the drone brood, so that we'll talk about interventions, but that provides some help for us. Megan Milgrath, who's at Michigan State, came out with an article. It's online, you can read it, has photos, but it's called Why Do My Bees Die? And it talks about what the varroa looks like. So a few different trends of colonies that die from varroa or viruses are that it was big and looked healthy in the fall or in the summer. It has a lot of honey and left in the hive. So if you have a colony that dies that has a lot of honey, that means that it didn't start, right? Like, unless it's just kind of somehow got separated from the honey and it couldn't move to honey in the cold temperatures. Oftentimes when colonies die from varroa viruses, they're pretty small. Oftentimes there aren't very many bees on the bottom board. Sometimes you'll see really spotty brood and bees kind of just emerging with their tongue sticking out. You'll see white spots stuck to the cell ceiling. I'll show you photos of those in a minute, but that's the mite poop that you can actually see. And then those are kind of signs of a full collapse of death by varroa. So oftentimes for this time of year, when people say, hey, my bees died, I don't know why, we'll ask them those questions because that's pretty common. Some other signs of a pretty big infestation of varroa and viruses are deformed wing viruses. So deformed wing virus is kind of misnamed, unfortunately. Like it's in most of our colonies, and a lot of bees have deformed wing virus, even if they don't have deformed wings. But the younger bees that have a pretty high load of deformed wings will emerge with deformed wings. They're stubby, they don't live very long. That's a sign that you have pretty high levels of deformed wing virus in your colony, and that's a virus that's spread by varroa. But again, it's a deformed wing virus in most of our colonies, even if we don't see those deformed wings. Another thing is called parasitic mite syndrome or brood virus syndrome. There's a lot of different names because Marla Civic of the Minnesota Bee Lab doesn't like that the acronym for parasitic mite syndrome is PMS, so she was trying to change the name, but she keeps changing the name that she changes it to. So anyway, there's a few different names going on there. You can just choose your favorite. I think brood virus syndrome is another one, but not everyone will maybe know what you're talking about if you use that acronym. But basically, it just means that we don't know exactly what's causing this, but when there's huge levels of mites in the colony, we'll see a lot of brood damage. So lots of viruses, issues in the brood just aren't developing well. Oftentimes the brood will kind of look like they're melted in the cells. They're not healthy, and you'll see a lot of uncapping too. down root. So that's when they're at the pupal stage and the bees are starting to clean out those pupae because there's disease. It doesn't, shoot down root isn't necessarily from varroa mites and viruses, but it can be. So, and then I told you to show you the cracks. So this is my coat. This is a pretty thick colony. But if you take a frame and you hold it down like this and you look at the ceilings of the cells, and you have good lighting, you'll be able to see the white poop on the cell ceiling. And the bees clean it out. So normally if you're seeing this mite poop, it means that you have pretty high mite levels. And I think it looks like just like a little dab of white up in that ceiling of the cell. So that's kind of another just like tool for you. You'll be monitoring your varroa levels, but it's also not a bad idea to check and see if you're seeing that it's just white poop. When do we see varroa? So this is the population model for mice in bees. So the yellow line here is bees, and then the red line is mice, and this is through January through December, so throughout the year. So what we see is that bees population starts out in the winter, strikes pretty low, it grows in the summer, and then goes back down in the fall. For bees, the mite cycle pretty much follows that cycle, but a little bit behind. And remember, those mites are reproducing in the brood. So as the honeybee colony grows in the brood, the mites are also reproducing. And when we really kind of see high levels of mites are August, September, October, and that's because we also have this proportion thing going on too, right? We have all these bees and then all these mites, and then the bee population drops. You still have a lot of mites being produced. So this chart shows bees and sealed, or sorry, mites and sealed on adult bees and mites and sealed brood. So the dotted line here is mites and adult bees, and the solid line is mites and then sealed brood. So we start out the year, mites on adult bees is going to be pretty low and pretty constant, hopefully in your colonies. And then once we have more brood in our colonies, the mites and sealed brood can really start spiking. And so August, September is when you have a lot of mites in sealed brood, and then your queen is going to start laying a lot less. So then at that point, you're going to have a lot more mites on adult bees, right? Because the mites aren't in the sealed brood, if your queen isn't laying, but they're all going to be on your adult bees. Who here has seen robbing? Bees robbing? Oh, I know, that's kind of bummer a lot of people. But that's good if you're able to recognize it, right? So when we're thinking about these populations, the spike of varroa in the fall, one reason is because of robbing. Remember, bees are entering colonies that aren't theirs, and that's an opportunity for varroa to switch hosts. So here's a video of the ones here. Do it here. It should display, but if I can't get it to go, I'll show it later on. Oh, it says medium and middle. Okay, so if you want to see what robbing looks like and you haven't seen it, find me and I have my computer here and I can show you a couple short videos. But basically, some things to look for are like bees. You'll see a lot of traffic. Sometimes it's hard because there's a lot of returning foragers and you're like, is this robbing or isn't it? But the robbing bees don't really know where the entrance is, and they'll kind of dart at the hive. Oftentimes they're going to places where they can smell honey, so the cracks between the boxes they'll kind of dart at, and at the entrances. Another sign of robbing is you can look at the bottom board, and oftentimes you'll see fighting, like the bees are like literally wrestling with each other, trying to defend that hive. And so when you see robbing in the fall, that's a concern, right? Because it means that there's potential for varroa transmission. And there's a few things you can do to stop that robbing. Like oftentimes we put a wet sheet over the hive or reduce the entrances so that bees have less space to defend. All right. So again, in this fall, that's when we see mite levels spike. Every dot in here is a varroa mite, or those main big dots, and that's from just a powdered sugar roll test that I'll talk about in a minute. So that's a lot of mites. For people who have done mite checks before, you can look at this and kind of freak out, right? Like that's a lot of mites in here. It's not what we want to see. All right. So Sam Ramsey out of the University of Maryland has been doing a lot of research on grow mites recently, and he, so for a while we all thought that, everyone thought that mites fed on the bee's hemolymph or the bee blood, right? And so that it's sucking this bee blood, and that's what it was feeding on. And Sam Ramsey's research shows that their mites are feeding more on the fat bodies of bees. And so the fat bodies are a lot of times on the underside of the abdomen. And this is important too because it helps us explain where the mites are and why we oftentimes just don't see them when they're at pretty low to medium levels. So here Sam looked at and quantified where mites were most often found, and most of the time it's on the underside of the abdomen, and then sometimes it is on the thorax. So a lot of times we see photos of mites on a thorax, but that's normally not where you're going to find them. And so just to remember, we have people who say like, oh, I'm just going to take a picture of my bees of the frames, and then I'll blow it up on my computer, and I'll look for mites, and that's how I'll tell if I have mites. I'm like, okay, like you have way more time than me, that's awesome. But also like that's not a good method for sampling because you're going to miss all those mites that are on the underside of the bees.
Is it true that it's 3 times more likely on the left side than the right?
It is more likely, I forget the exact number, it is more likely on the left side. I don't think we know why. I'm trying to see if it's in this here.
Left side of the bee or left side of the hive or left side of what?
It says found preferentially on the left side of the house. I think the actual paper quantifies how long, but yeah, so maybe it is 3 times the difference.
Well, it's 21%, right?
Okay, cool. Yeah. So